Yeah, it's a lot of attention put on a lot of negative stuff, and granted, the negative stuff existed and might still exist or whatever, but
Saul Hudson, better known as Slash, was born in London in 1965 and grew up between the quiet suburbs of Stoke-on-Trent and the relentless bustle of Los Angeles. He would later achieve worldwide fame as the hard rock lead guitarist of Guns N' Roses, earning acclaim as one of the greatest guitarists in history. Yet behind the famous top hat, curly hair, and blazing guitar licks lay a lonely, wounded soul. From the beginning, Slash's life was marked by displacement and tension. Born to a British artist father and a Black American fashion designer mother, he spent his early childhood cared for by his grandparents in England, while his mother built a career in Hollywood. By age 6, he joined his parents in Los Angeles. But the family unit did not last. His parents split a few years later, and Slash, always restless, later described himself as a problem child during that fractured youth. The nickname Slash came from actor Seymour Cassell, who said the hyperactive boy was always zipping around from one thing to another.
Even in childhood, Slash was chasing a dream he couldn't yet name. As a teen, he rode BMX bikes and ran wild in the streets of LA, but nothing grabbed him quite like rock music. At 14, he had what he called a big awakening when he heard Aerosmith's Rocks blasting from a friend's turntable. It hit me like a ton of bricks, he recalled. The riff spoke directly to the restless kid inside, giving him an identity and passion he had never known. From that moment, Slash threw himself into music with fanatic intensity. By night, he practiced guitar up to 12 hours a day, pushing his fingers to blister and bleed on scales and riffs. He dropped out of Beverly Hills High School to tour with a garage band called Titus Sloan in 1981, determined to chase the feeling that had electrified his soul.
In the mid-1980s, Slash's life changed again when he rejoined two friends, singer Axl Rose and guitarist Izzy Stradlin. After stints together in local bands, Axl and Izzy invited Slash to join a newly forming act, Guns N' Roses, in 1985. The chemistry was explosive. Slash helped hammer out the dark, blistering guitar riffs that would become some of the band's biggest anthems. The guitar intro of Sweet Child O' Mine, the crushing riff of Welcome to the Jungle, and the searing solos of Paradise City all came from that era. With a raw sound that combined punk ferocity and bluesy flair, the band quickly earned a reputation. In 1987, Guns N' Roses released Appetite for Destruction, a debut album that shot to #1. Won and made them overnight rock legends.
But even as the cheers roared, backstage life was descending into chaos. The band's motto quickly became sex, drugs, and rock and roll in its most dangerous form. By the time Appetite exploded, Slash and his bandmates were already deep into hard partying lifestyles. Slash later admitted that once the tour adrenaline peaked, he plunged headfirst into hardcore partying, using drugs and alcohol to chase the high of playing to thousands every night. "I was just going headlong into everything," he said of that era. Nights blurred into one another. Cocktails of heroin, cocaine, and vodka became routine. On stage, his guitar radiated power and swagger, but offstage the world spun into a dangerous haze. Once the music stopped, Slash often felt empty. The image of him crouching on stage, top hat cocked, and Les Paul guitar wailing concealed the emptiness that followed each encore. He later spoke candidly about the crash of the tour high. "Nobody ever spoke about what happens when the tour stops and the adrenaline ends," he said. In that void, Slash chased the next hit. Drugs were an escape from the silence after the last chord rang out. Each morning he woke to find himself stranger to himself than the night before. Slowly, the partying took its toll. On tour in 2001, Slash literally came close to death. Doctors diagnosed him with cardiomyopathy, a form of heart failure brought on by years of abuse. He remembers it as surreal. "I got a letter the other day from my tour manager detailing one of the times I died back in 2001, he said years later, shuddering at how near he'd been to the end. At 35, he was given weeks to live, until a defibrillator was implanted in his chest, keeping the valve of death at bay. Beaten broken, Slash finally stopped running. He got sober in 2006 and began to rebuild a healthier life. Beating the odds, as he would later call it, but the scars remained, a faint flutter in his chest, and an even fainter reminder that his own legendary heartbeat could have quieted forever. "I just feel lucky to be here," he confessed, gratitude mixing uneasily with survivor's guilt. By the early 1990s, the band's famed unity was fracturing. Small fights had grown lethal. Even in the studio, the tension was palpable. Guitarist Slash later admitted that the cover of the Rolling Stones' "Sympathy for the Devil," recorded for a movie soundtrack, was a dead giveaway. It felt like everything went to hell for Guns N' Roses. The track came out flat and soulless, and Slash remarked it was literally the sound of the band breaking up right there. Behind that brutal admission was private anguish. "Sympathy is when I knew I just couldn't take it anymore," he confessed in a rare moment of honesty. Friends had already been lost. Drummer Steven Adler had been fired in 1990, rhythm guitarist Izzy Stradlin walked away in 1991, and with every departure the band's center collapsed in on itself. After a final chaotic tour, Slash quietly walked out of Guns N' Roses for good. His last show was in mid-1993, but Axl Rose's machine kept rolling months after in name. It was a bitter separation. Rumors flew that Slash left over creative clashes with Axl, but Slash set the record straight in his autobiography. He felt betrayed when Axl began treating the band like hired guns under his thumb, making them sign restrictive contracts and forcing late-stage calls into hour-long limbo. In his heart, Slash still loved the music, but he hated living in Axl's shadows. By 1996, he declared it was over and walked away from the ruin of the band he had helped create. It was a loss not just of a band, but of a home. A wound that festered quietly as he set out to find meaning again. Slash has spoken little of the loneliness of fatherhood from the road, but one can imagine a father returning from tour dates, physically exhausted but mentally restless, haunted by ghosts. His music career demanded his all, and family life often paid the price. In the early 2000s, Slash reached out to his past one more time. Along with former Guns comrades Duff McKagan and Matt Sorum, he formed a new band, Velvet Revolver, with guitarist Dave Kushner and vocalist Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots. Velvet Revolver was, in many ways, a second chance. Their debut album Contraband 2004 was a critical and commercial success, yielding hits like the snarling Slither, which even won a Grammy in 2005. Slash seemed reborn, again thrashing stadiums, but the old sins quietly returned. Weiland's erratic behavior and the weight of comparisons to GNR kept tensions high. By 2008, that band too had collapsed. Weiland was fired and Velvet Revolver went on indefinite hiatus. Slash was 25 years into a rock career and still searching for something he couldn't name. Redemption, peace, a true release from pain. While the world thought Slash still chasing fame, a quieter transformation was happening. He'd published his memoir Slash in 2007, laying bare his vices and regrets for the first time. In the 2010s, he finally fronted his own band, featuring singer Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, and recorded a series of solo albums that let him play the music he loved.